Good morning, students. I'm Dr. Jyoti, Associate Professor, Department of Pathology. In today's class, I'm going to talk on the units which we are used in laboratories, like different forms of SI units and conventional units in laboratories. Before that, we should know what exactly these units are. These laboratory tests, what we perform these tests as a tool for diagnosing the diseases, assessing the safety, tolerability, assessing the pharmacokinetics or pharmacodynamics, and so on. So a very common issue is the reporting units for these laboratory tests. So there are basically two different unit systems what we use in our laboratories. They are conventional units and SI units. So comes to conventional units. Conventional units is also called as US conventional units or United States customary units. In the US, most people expresses, this is just an example how we express different units. So in US they express distance in inches, feet, yards or miles, which is different from what we use or what other countries use. Those units along with the units we use for speed, volume and other quantities are known as US conventional system or US conventional units. Next is SI units or system internationally. The international system of units, abbreviated as SI from the French, that is Lie Système International de Units, is the modern form of the metric system and is the world's most widely used system of measurement. So SI units, what we use in our day-to-day life, like meters for the distance, kilograms for the weight or mass, seconds for the time and Kelvin for the temperature. So each base unit measures a different quantity. For example, meter is for the length and the kilogram is for the mass. So these are the different SI units what we use in our India or internationally it is accepted form of the measurement. So the units of these two systems are different, but the quantities they represent do not change. The units have a fixed relationship to each other. The laboratory results reported in US conventional units can be converted into the results in SI units or vice versa. So here it means conventional units can be converted to SI units or SI units can be converted to conventional units. The relationship to convert a value from one system to another is called as conversion factor. So every unit or every measurement we have one conversion factor which will convert the conventional unit to SI unit. So these are few prefixes or symbols which we use in a laboratory unit, like we have 10 to the power of 12 which is called as a tetra, 10 to the power of 9 as a giga, 10 to the power of 6 mega, 3 is kilo, 10 to the power of minus 3 is milli, minus 6 micro, minus 9 as a nano, minus 12 as a pico, minus 15 as femto, minus 18 as atto. So these are some prefixes which we used in all our laboratory investigations for reporting the results. So this is just an example. I'll show you results of hematology or coagulation test. This can be converted between conventional and SI units if the conversion factors are known. Just one example of hemoglobin I'll take you. Just see in the third column, hemoglobin, where we take the whole blood as a specimen, and hemoglobin's conventional units what we use is the gram per deciliter. If you use the conversion factor of 10, then the SI unit will be gram per liter. Similarly, we can see next platelet counts. If you see whole blood is a specimen, 10 to the power of 3 microliter. We know that the platelet count is around 1.5 to 4.5 lakhs per cubic mm or per microliter. So conventional unit is microliter. If you use the conversion factor 1, then the SI unit will be 10 to the power of 9 per liter. The next you can see the WBC count. The normal WBC count is expressed in cells. So normal count is around 4,000 to 11,000 cells per cubic mm or per microliter. So our conventional unit is 10 to the power of 3 per microliter. Conversion factor is 1. So it will become 10 to the power of 9 per liter. So similarly, we have different conventional units and SI units for our coagulation studies too. That is the for estimation of antithrombin 3, coagulation factors, fibrin degradation products. Our conventional units will be in milligram per deciliter, which will become milligram per liter when you use a conversion factor of 10. Similarly, then we'll go for some of the biochemical parameters where we have the conventional unit, conversion factor and the SI unit. I'll take one of the examples in this. Just you go for the albumin component here. Albumin conventional unit is gram per deciliter. If you use the conversion factor 10, then the SI unit will be gram per liter. The next is you can see the amylase report. Amylase is conventional units per liter, 1 conversion units per liter, and androstenedione nanogram per deciliter, which will turn out to be millimole per liter. So similarly, we have different conventional units and SI units for the different laboratory parameters. So in the last row you can see fructose and galactose, we have milligram per deciliter. When you use the conversion factor, this will change into micromole per liters if you use the SI units. So coming to this, due to the difference between two unit system for a clinical trial where the central laboratory services are used, the decision needs to be made on which unit system is used for reporting the laboratory results to the investigators and to the sponsors. If it is a domestic trial in US, it is better to report the central laboratory test results in US conventional units to the investigators. If it is a multinational trial, then SI unit is better to report. So for laboratory test results transferred to the sponsor, the results in both units can be requested. So SI unit is the overall accepted term or accepted units for giving the reports, giving the laboratory reports, whereas these conventional units mostly used in the United States. So here this is just a brief introduction about how the SI units and conventional units are used with the help of a conversion factors. Then next topic will be on the hemostasis. Hemo is nothing but hem is a blood and stasis is stoppage or flow. Normal hemostasis is the result of a set of well regulated processes that accomplish two important functions. First one, in normal hemostasis, the main function is to maintain the blood in a fluid state, that is a clot free state in a normal vessel, so that there is a free flow of the blood in all the blood vessels. And second is they are poised to induce a rapid and localized hemostatic plug at a site of vascular injury. That means whenever there is a vascular injury, immediately blood clot should occur to form a hemostatic blood and stoppage of the bleeding. This is the main function, or it is called as normal hemostasis. So normally the exact meaning of hemostasis is blood to be in a free flow state or a fluid state. So and this is achieved by the factors like we have endothelial cells, that is in the vascular wall. The cells lining the vascular wall is called as the endothelial cells, and we do require platelets for this and a coagulation cascade. Then in hemostasis is divided into three types. One is called as a primary and secondary and tertiary. So primary hemostasis is the first event. Whenever there is an injury, it is the first event in hemostasis. There is a formation of platelet plug, and this basically depends on the normal platelet number and platelet function. And this is the initial manifestation of clot formation. Then we have secondary hemostasis, where there is a activation of clotting cascade and the deposition and stabilization of fibrin. Then it's a tertiary hemostasis, where there is a total dissolution of fibrin clot, which is dependent on the plasminogen activation. So normal hemostasis is a sequence of events at the site of injury. Initially, there is a brief period of vasoconstriction due to reflex neurogenic mechanism, that is due to endothelin release. So this is the blood vessel which is lined by the endothelial cells, and the above lined by endothelial cells, basement membrane, and the above ones are the arterial smooth muscle. This is the arrow mark which is shown as a site of injury. Whenever there is a site of injury, there is a brief vasoconstriction due to release of endothelin, which is released from the endothelial cells. So this is the first step in primary hemostasis. So primary hemostasis is basically endothelial injury exposes highly thrombogenic subendothelial extracellular matrix, which allows the platelets to adhere and become activated, that is undergoes a shape change and release of secretory granules, platelet aggregation, which forms the hemostatic plug. So in this picture you can see the first one. Here there is a site. This is a site of injury where there is a exposure of collagen has occurred, and there is these green colors. What you are seeing is all the platelets. They have come at the site of injury and they adhere to each other. Then there is a change in the shape from round to they have become oval, or they align themselves. Once there is a shape change, they release some granules like ADP and thromboxane A2, and there is more recruitment of platelets, and finally there is a formation of hemostatic plug, and this will stop the bleeding. So remember, this is primary hemostasis mainly to form, it is mainly for the formation of the clot at the site of injury to stop the blood. Then we have, so in primary hemostasis, platelet function is must. So we have normal platelet and normal platelet function too. So next comes the secondary hemostasis. In secondary hemostasis is nothing but synthesis of tissue factor, that is a procoagulant factor by the endothelium. And here in the secondary hemostasis, the basic mechanism is the activation of the coagulation pathway to form thrombin, which converts the fibrinogen into fibrin. So this picture shows you the secondary hemostasis where there is an activation of coagulation pathway. That means the clot formation with the help of these coagulation factors, what we know. So here at the site of injury, after the primary hemostasis, there is the release of tissue factor, phospholipid complex expression, thrombin activation, fibrin polymerization. All these leads to formation of fibrin at the site of injury. So next is, that is tertiary hemostasis. The tertiary meaning of tertiary hemostasis is basically once the clot or the scab is formed, that clot has to dissolve slowly. For that, this is called as dissolution of the fibrin clot, which is formed due to secondary hemostasis. This occurs due to release of, that is TPA, tissue fibrinoplastine. That is also, this is helpful in fibrinolysis. The fibrin which is formed, the clot which is formed is dissolved by TPA. And thrombomodulin, which blocks the coagulation cascade. Further formation of clot is blocked by thrombomodulin. It is also called as antithrombotic counterregulation mechanism or tertiary hemostasis. So these are just diagrammatic representations to show how that primary, secondary and tertiary hemostasis takes place. Here the platelets, resting platelets, they come and adhere to the site of injury called as platelet adhesion. This is a vessel wall. Then initial thrombin formation, that is secondary, that is activation of the coagulation pathway. All the coagulation factors come and the clot formation occurs called as thrombin formation. Platelet activation, platelet release reaction. The platelet release some of the mediators like thromboxane A2, ADP, serotonin, fibrinogen and thrombospodulin, which will ultimately form the clot. So the final product, what it is formed, called as platelet plug formation or the clot formation to stop the bleeding. So this is our coagulation pathway. We all are aware the coagulation pathway, it is basically divided into two pathways. One is called as intrinsic pathway, another is called as extrinsic pathway. The right side what you are seeing is a extrinsic pathway, and the right side you are seeing is intrinsic pathway. Intrinsic pathway starts from the factor 7 when there is a vessel wall injury. Similarly, the process go on. It involves the factor 7, factor 10, factor 5, factor 8. Ultimately, it leads to a pathway called as common factor, which starts from factor 8, and then the extrinsic pathway starts from the factor 9, which activates the inactive 9 to the 9, and then to the 8. Then this pathway leads to a common pathway where thrombin is activated, which converts fibrinogen to fibrin monomer, then the fibrin polymer or fibrinopeptides. So this is the normal coagulation pathway where all the coagulation factors, the overall total we have 13 coagulation factors. These coagulation factors act together to form a clot, that is a fibrin polymer or stable fibrin clot. Once the clot is formed, and this clot also is dissolved by the tertiary hemostasis. So we have certain laboratory tests for assessing the integrity, for assessing the primary hemostasis, secondary hemostasis and tertiary hemostasis. So tests for primary hemostasis are platelet count. I have already told the normal platelet count is around 1.5 to 4.5 lakhs per cubic mm. The count is decreased. If there are less platelets, then the platelet adhesion, activation, the primary hemostasis gets affected. Then next is the perfect smear examination, again to see the platelet count. Then we have some tests called as a bleeding time, clotting time and PFA 100 test. All these tests will assess the integrity of the primary hemostasis. Then next test for secondary hemostasis. In secondary hemostasis, that is a clotting pathway where we are assessing the function of the clotting factors. In this we have two tests called as a prothrombin time and activated partial thromboplastin times. Then last test we do have some specific tests for assessing these hemostasis like mixing test and coagulation factor assays. So first one is the bleeding time. So bleeding time is nothing but the bleeding time forms a standard puncture wound. It's a measure of function of the platelets. That's the function means platelet adhesion, aggregation, release and the plug formation. All these constitutes the function of platelet, as well as this will measure the integrity of the vessel wall. Is there any abnormality in the vessel wall or there is abnormality in the platelet? So in bleeding time we have different methods of estimation of bleeding time, like we have Duke's method, Ives method, template method, finger prick method. So for all these these are the requirements. We need one stopwatch, lancet, filter paper, glass slide and the alcohol sponges. So first method is called as the Duke's method. So Duke's method is not used regularly. In this method what we do, we just give a small cut in the lower earlobe and we allow the blood to flow, and we collect the blood drop by drop on a tissue paper, and for every 30 seconds we collect a different drop and we calculate the bleeding time. The second is Ives method. In the Ives method, what picture you are seeing, we use a sphygmomanometer cuff which is tied on the arm, and then we do a small incisions, punctures on the forearm, and then the punctures will give a small hemorrhagic spots. For every 30 seconds you go on calculate, you go on seeing the bleeding time, at what time it will stop. So Ives method is the standard method of doing the bleeding time, but even then we don't use it regularly in our day-to-day practice. The third method is the finger prick method. This is commonly used in the laboratories and it is very easy. Just take a lancet and prick your fourth finger usually, which is commonly used, and allow the blood to flow. With the help of a tissue paper, for every 30 seconds go on touching the drop of blood on your finger, and how many till that blood stops. Then you have to calculate for how long the bleeding was there with the help of stopwatch. So normally the bleeding time, the normally bleed should stop within 5 minutes to 6 minutes. If it is not stopped, then definitely the bleeding time is increased. Normally it is 1 to 6 minutes. 6 to 10 minutes is borderline, more than 10 minutes is definitely abnormal. Something is wrong. Abnormal means there is no platelet plug formation. Something would have happened with the platelets. That is, prolonged bleeding time is seen in thrombocytopenia, less platelet count. Disorders of platelet function. Though count is normal, platelets are not functioning normal. Then we have disorders of coagulation. If platelets are normal, the second step, that is secondary hemostasis, coagulation factors are not normal, so the patient is continues to bleed. Then third one could be vascular disorder. Platelets are normal, coagulation factors are normal, but the vessel wall itself is abnormal, so it is giving more bleeding time. Hope you all understood. So next is clotting time. Clotting time is nothing but formation of clot, that is a secondary hemostatic plug. So clotting time was used as screening test to measure the all stages in intrinsic coagulation system and to monitor heparin therapy. Heparin is an anticoagulant drug which will stop the formation of clot in certain disorders like stroke or MIs. So procedure for clotting time will be, again we have three methods. One is called as a capillary tube method, second is called as a clot retraction method, the third one is called as slide method. So capillary tube method is most commonly used. Capillary tube method and slide methods what we use in our routine laboratory day-to-day practices. So in this what we will do, we collect the blood in blood is collected in capillaries under aseptic precaution. Similarly, what we do, we have to just prick the finger and just attach, take the capillary to the blood. With the capillary function, the blood will get sucked inside the capillary tube. The tube is sealed and immersed in a water bath at 37 degrees Celsius. After 4 minutes, remove the tube and expel the blood. So then repeat every 30 seconds until the warm clot is expelled. So normally 5 to 10 minutes is the clotting time, and these clotting times is prolonged whenever there is a secondary hemostatic defect, whenever there is a problem in coagulation factors, that is afibrinogenemia and hyperheparinemia. When the heparin dose is more, even then the clotting time is more. So next is our prothrombin time, which is a test to assess mainly the secondary hemostasis. So what it does, the prothrombin time, also called as a PT, it measures the clotting time of plasma in the presence of an optimal concentration of tissue, that is thromboplastin, and it indicates the overall efficacy of the extrinsic clotting system. So in the clotting system we have two pathways, intrinsic and extrinsic. PT, what it does, it tells the exact functioning of our extrinsic clotting system and the common system. So reagents required for this test is patient and the control plasma samples, and one separate reagent called as a liquiplastin, also called as calcium thromboplastin. The principle behind this test is tissue thromboplastin in the presence of calcium. Calcium is required for the activation of the pathways, activation of the coagulation pathway. So calcium is present. Tissue thromboplastin in the presence of calcium activates the extrinsic pathway of the human blood coagulation mechanism. When liquiplastin reagent is added to the normal anticoagulated plasma, the clotting mechanism is initiated, which forms a solid cell clot within a specified period of time. So the time required for this clot formation is called as PT, and the time required for the clot formation would be prolonged if there is a deficiency of their factors in extrinsic pathway. Any of the factors which are used in extrinsic pathway are deficient, then of course there is no clot formation and the prothrombin time will be prolonged. So this is the procedure. So normally you take 0.1 ml of patient plasma in a test tube, then we add a thromboplastin. That tube is placed in a water bath for 3 to 5 minutes, then add liquiplastin in the test tube containing patient's plasma and mix the content. Start the stopwatch and gently tilt the tube and stop the watch as soon as the first fibrin strand or clot is visible. If you tilt the tube, the clot should not detach and it should fall down. The overall plasma and the reagent should form a solid clot. At what time the clot is formed? This the time duration is called as prothrombin time. So normal value of prothrombin time is 11 to 16 seconds. Within this seconds, immediately when we add this liquid-plastine and when we start the watch, within 16 seconds you should see the formation of clots. And if it is prolonged, then there is some deficiencies in the factors of the extrinsic. So prolonged PT is seen in inherited deficiencies of the extrinsic and common pathways, that is deficiencies in factor 7, factor 10, 5, 2 and 1. And some of the liver diseases, like liver is one of the sites where the coagulation factors are formed. So when liver has some problems, these coagulation factors are not formed, which will lead to increased in prothrombin time. And sometimes patients who are on oral anticoagulant therapy will have increased or prolonged PT. Vitamin K deficiency patients, then patients who are having DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation. So all these are the causes of prolonged PT, where you can see the normal 11 to 15 seconds will cross and it can go back to sometimes more than 15 to sometimes it can go to 50 or 100 seconds also. Then in PT reporting we have something called as INR and ISIs. INR is nothing but International Normalized Ratio, which was established by the WHO and the International Committee on Thrombosis and Hemostasis for reporting the results of PT. All PT results are standardized by this calculation. So INR have to be calculated for the PT. The formula for INR is equal to patient's PT divided by the control PT. Control PT is taken out by the mean of average set of normal PTs into ISI. ISI is nothing but it is the International Sensitivity Index, and this ISI is given by the manufacturer for each particular thromboplastin reagent and instrument combination. So when you are calculating the PT, INR has to be calculated for that particular PT. So next test will be activated partial thromboplastin time, also called as short form is APTT. APTT is nothing but it mainly assesses the abnormalities in the intrinsic coagulation pathway and the common pathway. Here in this picture what you are seeing, the left side is the intrinsic pathway and right side is the extrinsic pathway. Extrinsic pathway is the PT, intrinsic pathway is APTT. It estimates abnormality in most of the clotting factors of intrinsic and common pathways and congenital deficiency of factors like 8, 9, 11 and 12. And the principle behind the activated partial thromboplastin time is cephaloplastin, which we add to the patient's plasma will activate the coagulation factors of the intrinsic pathway of coagulation in the presence of calcium ion. So normal APTT is around 30 to 40 seconds. APTT is prolonged in, again same like PT. APTT is prolonged when there is abnormality or deficiency of the factors which are there in the intrinsic, inherited deficiency of intrinsic factors, that is factor 8, factor 9 and some circulating inhibitors, DIC, in DIC both PT and APTTs are increased, heparin which is an anticoagulant and liver diseases, vitamin K deficiency, this APTT is increased. So this is the mechanism of showing the clot formation. If the clot formation takes time, that means there is a increase in APTT. So here we finished the basics in hemostasis, the exact meaning of hemostasis, what is primary, secondary, tertiary and the tests required to assess these hemostasis, which includes BT, CT for primary hemostasis, PT, APTT for secondary hemostasis, and there we do have some specific studies like specific factors assays which we can estimate. Along with this, we understood the concepts of different SI units and conventional units which we use in our day-to-day laboratory results. Thank you so much.